now. Morning, fish keepers. Cam here from thefishroom.co.nz. We've done it. We've made it to Friday. But I can't celebrate with coffee because my coffee machine just shit the bed. It's a tragedy. It's not working. I've had a coffee, so I'm somewhat happy. But I'm also disappointed the machine's not working. So that's for me to deal with. We'll deal with that after the fact. But for now, we'll bring up our guest of honor. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Pam.
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic.
How are you guys doing? We're kind of spread out across the world here.
We certainly are. Yeah.
Right,
I'm very cold.
Oh.
It's coming into winter and my fingers are quite chilly and we've had a bit of a cold snap overnight, so that's not that much fun.
Well, we're just starting to warm up here, so we're kind of getting spring weather finally. And
same here.
It's been
It's
lovely.
a little bit of an ongoing joke with John and myself. As I get cold, he gets warm and he starts rubbing it in my face, and then as he gets cold, we get warm and I return surf. Alrighty. So can you tell us what got you interested in and how you started with keeping aquariums and tropical fish?
Well, how much time do we have?
All the time that you want to give us.
It'd be a long story. Actually, I didn't really have any. I didn't know anything about fish when I was growing up. We didn't have an aquarium or anything like that. But when I met Gary, who eventually became my husband, he had fish. And I was just amazed at these fish. And he was into like tank buster fish, okay? Arowanas, Arapima, big knife fish, Oscars, Pacus. And he had built all these aquariums himself, out of plywood. And behind his couch, he had this, I think it was 90 gallons. And he had, it was divided. You couldn't tell it was divided, but anyway, it had two arowanas in it, and they were going back and forth. Yeah, it was very, very cool. So I was enamored by the fish right off the bat. And over time, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, then Gary and I started kind of going out, and I was totally interested in the fish. And we found out that there was a fish club in Sacramento, California, where we live. And so we checked that out. And it was just at the time when a lot of new fish were coming in. This is like the late 80s, early 90s. And all of these fish were coming in that had never been really in before. And we kind of went from the tank busters to cichlids because Gary had never really done a lot of breeding, but he had gotten some angelfish and he was into discus and was so interested in breeding them. And then all of a sudden we kind of flip a U-ey and started keeping some African cichlids. Stuff was just coming in from Malawi. And then we kind of went that direction. And I guess we're still not done because we're still got a lot of Rift Lake cichlids going.
Cool. How was the transition from big tank busters to keeping African cichlids? Was it pretty smooth, or was there a whole lot of learning that we did?
Well, it wasn't like an overnight ordeal, it was kind of gradual. But the thing about keeping tank busters, or I like to call it, they're really pets because they're usually kept solitary, and cichlids have so much personality. And there's just nothing like Oscars wagging in your face and this kind of thing. And so you become more attached to them because of that personality, And, where when you're breeding angelfish and you've got 500 fry that you're bringing up, you don't have them all named. So it was kind of it was just kind of a transition period. We definitely had our favorites. But as we were moving into other stuff, what's not your favorite, goes away and you use that tank space for something else.
Yeah. Did you look at it like I've got this 6-foot tank with 1 fish in it, the 6-foot space could have 500 fish in it, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
In some cases, yeah. And especially when we figured out that the African cichlids were mouth brooders, and you had to breed them in harems rather than I mean, you can breed an angelfish in a gallon milk container practically, where the totally different method of breeding. So you have to adapt and change your setup.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So what is it about cichlids that you find so fascinating comparatively to other fish?
Well, I think it's their personality. They seem to, they truly entertain you. The other thing is the ease of breeding. It's a very rewarding to get your fish to spawn, and cichlids are just that's what they're born to do, right? So and as we were in this club, and they had a breeders award program, and so every time you breed a fish you get points, and there were so many fish coming in. I mean, now I kind of look at that differently, where we had so many fish that they kind of went through our hands because you wanted to breed more fish to get more points. And now I think the hobby is turning more towards maintaining species rather than just how many fish can you breed.
You predominantly just keep reflect cichlids, or branched out to a wider range as well?
Now, we've had quite a change. When we first started keeping fish, we lived downtown Sacramento, and since then we've moved out into the more rural area, and we have a building that's just for the fish. So we have a fish house, and our water out here is completely different than what we had downtown. I mean, you can do angels and discus down there, that there's no way you're going to do it out here. It's like liquid concrete. So being the lazy Aquarius that we are, and don't want to manipulate your water and do all of that, an easy fix was the Africans. But we were also fascinated with them just because there were so many coming in, and they were so beautiful, and the colors and the behaviors. In Malawi really got us hooked, and then you just gradually graduate to Tanganyika.
Cool. So there's been a couple of questions from the floor before we continue on. I've been asked to ask you about the Unistrut stand she used to have. Is there a story behind it?
Yeah. So the thing about having a fish house or a fish room or all your fish in a basement, and you need this racking. And so often people just, you use the 2x4s, which, that's fine. And you can paint them, but, in a couple of years, they look pretty ragged. And then you decide you want to, change your fish house around, or, move all the 10-gallon tanks over here and all the big tanks over here. And you got to build all new stands, and they only last so long. And so I think that Gary was probably, I don't know, on his 4th or 5th time that we were like rebuilding stands. And I'm retired now, but I worked for a mechanical contractor, which is plumbing, heating, air conditioning. And I learned about Unistrut. And we were doing all these commercial buildings, and we had, we need to worry about seismic here because we really are an earthquake country. And so I was always sending stuff to these seismic engineers, and got to know them over the years or whatever. And so I just asked him, I said, hey, help me design a stand out of Unistrut. I gave him my worst scenario, which would be 18 60-gallon tanks, 9 on one side, 9 on the other, back to back. That was my worst scenario. And so they designed a stand, and they have all these fittings. It's a nut and bolt system. It's not welding, because welding is, horribly expensive. And to find a good welder is, it's pretty tough. So this was something that we could cut ourselves, nut and bolt it together. Want to change it, undo it, do something else with it. We're really lucky. Our fish house has is on a concrete slab, so we could just drill the support right into the concrete to hold the stands in place.
Yeah.
And we have had those set up now for almost 20 years, I would say. And I guess it's been maybe a year and a half. I pulled out one of the first stands that we put in. We pulled it out to have some more room because we're kind of, slowing down in this fish keeping thing a little bit. We wanted more room to sit in this room to see the other tanks.
Yeah.
And, it had been there for probably 15, 18 years, hardly any rust at all. It's an extruded material. Then they put a hot dip galvanized on it. So, yeah, but it's not cheap. But if you add up all the times I would have had to rebuild the tanks and the labor and the begging to get your husband to do that, it's been a wonderful investment. Plus,
20 years is a good bit of longevity.
Yeah, the longevity is unbelievable. And because I work for a mechanical contractor, I had access to the material for wholesale, which is, another. Now steel is just, through the roof. So it's a fantastic system, but it's expensive, but you're never going to have to build stands again for sure.
Yeah. Cool. And the other thing is, you've mentioned your fish house a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Can you please dive a little bit deeper into that? What sort of size are we talking? How many aquariums and how many species and that sort of stuff have you got in there?
So right now, we mostly have Tanganyika and Malawi fish. We have a few Central American cichlids that are kind of pets. And the fish house is about 1,200 square feet. And it's only has 2 walls in it. So it's like 3 rooms that are like 20 by 20. And this was something that really appealed to us when we were trying to find a place where we could set the fish up right away. It had a slab floor and it had a kitchen in it. So we had running water. So it was really, really an ideal situation. The middle room we call the fish lounge. We just have all the walls lined with tanks, and then we can sit in the middle. And then in the east room, we have our, the west room, we have a holding tank. We have really bad dissolved gases. When it first comes out of the hose, you can't put it in a fish tank. The bubbles just kill the fish. So we have to let our water just sit for like 24 hours to gas off. So we have a big holding tank in there to gas off our water, and a nice big utility stainless steel sink that we can work at. And there's 8 like 125s that we have, and I think the rest of them on the walls are 55s, maybe a couple dozen 55s in there. And then the east room is where the kitchen is, and Gary still has a few 20-gallon tanks that he's using for breeding, so he's got a rack of about 20 of those. And then we've got all other tanks in there are very large. We have 125, some 150s, a 180. Yeah, so some bigger tanks. So we've got probably 35 tanks over 100 gallons. And the rest are 55s and 20s. And we're about a total of about 100 tanks right now. Yeah. My husband he's getting older, and he hates going up the ladder. And back down, up and down the ladder all the time. So I said, well, then let's just get rid of the top tanks. So we did that about a year and a half ago. We took all the very top tanks out, put up art instead of tanks. And that's really been a big help.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. We've had another question. Oh, fire away, John.
Yeah, so out of all the guests that we've had people that have had like fish rooms, fish shipping containers, and fish sheds and huts and all sorts. This is the first guest that's had a fish house with a west wing and an east wing and art. It makes it sound like some sort of country manor mansion. It's quite elaborate.
Well, this it used to be like in-laws. That's what it was designed for. It was like in-law quarters. So you have the regular people house, and then these were in-law quarters. And it just happened to be a slab floor, with only 2 walls in it. And it was just like, wow, this'll work. We had already sold our house, and we had all the fish down in the basement. So we had to move everything out. We had to have something immediately to place the fish when we moved out. We didn't really have any time to build anything. Otherwise, we would have had to get rid of everything, and we just couldn't do it.
No, it sounds perfect, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds very much like the dream of many.
Well, it was unbelievable. I mean, I don't think I could do it today. So we're very lucky that we have it. We don't need to move, and we can take advantage of what we have. But it's a lot of fun. And a fish house, fish room, whatever, it's a work in progress. I mean, we have remodeled this thing and changed stuff around, 100 times. It's been about a year and a half. I haven't done anything, but I'll get over there and think of something.
It's always something that needs to be done at some point.
Right.
Yeah. How many species of Neolampologus do you think you have?
Just a couple. I have a really nice tank of Lalupi that we've had for a long time. We've kept these going for years. They're real nice yellow, but they got, Gary feeds them a lot of krill, so they're kind of orange. And yeah, those are really cool. I love those a lot. And that, I think, is about it. We have some Altolamprologus. We have some Compressiceps and Calvus, the run-of-the-mill stuff. And some Transcriptus. And then I'm into Tropheus. So I have about a dozen groups of Tropheus. And of course, Gary and I are both very purist people. So very purist when we come to our fish. And, I always want to do the species only tank and try to maintain them.
Yep. So all of your aquarium species only, or do you have some mixed ones hanging around as well?
No, I just can't mix anything. Over the years, it's just bitten me. You think, oh yeah, I could get away with that. And it's a matter, you usually don't get away with it. So I just really think if you want to see them really, really thrive, try to do species only. It's a little harder with the substrate spawner. But if you have 50 Lalupi in a big 125 and 4 or 5 pots, you'll have enough Lalupi. You don't have to worry.
Yeah. Feeding fish is a very hot topic in the hobby and the industry in general. What's your food system, or what do you feed out, and what have you found the best for your riff-led cichlids?
Well, we feed a wide variety of foods. Right now, we are hot on this cold flake. Have you heard about that? Where the flake, this is a flake food that their claim to fame is that it's made at cooler temperatures. And so what happens to regular flake food, they have to get the temperature so high that all the nutrients and those type of things are gone when they're done with it. And they call this a cold flake or a cool flake. And it's made by Brine Shrimp Direct, which is a brine shrimp company in Salt Lake City, right on the Great Salt Lake. And they are originally, how we ran across them was we would buy brine shrimp eggs from them. And they always had the brine shrimp eggs. And then they started getting into some other foods. So they've started this. I don't know if they're making this cold flake themselves or if someone else, they buy it from someone else, but I don't know anyone else that's selling it. And it's very reasonably priced. The fish love it. But what I like about it is that it really holds its flake. You get the big flake, There's nothing worse than getting a 5-pound box of flake food. And by the time you get 10 flakes off the top, the rest of it's powder. And this really, really holds its shape. It's kind of I don't know, it's just like a little bit thicker. And so anyway, we're hot on that. And it comes in any way you want it. You can get an all vegetable, or you can get a krill or a brine shrimp. So we feed a lot of that. The staple for the Tropheus is a green flake. And then we supplement that with freeze-dried krill or mysis shrimp. Because I believe the Tropheus need a little bit of protein to be able to be in spawning condition. Okay. And, so that's about it. Everybody gets a little treat when they're passing out the krill and the mysis.
Tropheus are obviously known as bloaters, and it's a very common thing. And I know there's a lot of people that have a theory that flake can cause it, or too much protein can cause that. And you were right there, totally countering that with feeding them flake and feeding them a little bit of extra protein. In your experience with Tropheus, how are they for bloating, and how can you avoid that?
Well, I don't think bloating has anything to do with their diet. Okay. Everybody likes to blame bloating on the diet, but it's very complex. And Tropheus have a lot of mental issues as well. Okay? And if a fish is going to bloat, it's because of aggression and its pecking order in the group itself. Yeah. So now that doesn't mean that, it might eat the food and then get an upset stomach and then show the bloating issues. But 9 times out of 10, bloating is aggression in your tank. Somebody's beating somebody up.
Really? Wow. That's really curious to know.
I'm surprised you didn't know that.
No, from everyone that I've spoken to, it's always food related is what they've kind of put it down to, or feeding too much of something. It's never sort of been discussed, that potential.
Well, I think that you probably, you have to think of Trophy as kind of like a house of cards. Okay. And you take out the one card where you fed them too much food. You take out a card because you didn't keep up on your water changes. Okay. You take out a card because you've got somebody flying through the tank, beating everybody up. And it just takes one more card before your whole house falls apart. And it can be because, one of these things is going to eventually just trigger it down. But the main cause is usually aggression. But I do like to keep my Tropheus on the hungry side. I'm not an overfeeder. When I feed the Tropheus, they have to eat that food in 2 minutes, and there will never be a drop of food that goes to the bottom of the tank.
Yeah, well, yep.
So there are people that maybe do feed their Tropheus too much food, but I don't think food's the issue.
Do you find keeping them in large numbers is more helpful for a colony? Yes. And is there specific species that need bigger numbers than other numbers?
I don't believe in a ratio. I don't believe in a ratio. I want 50 fish. I don't care what sex they are.
Right.
And that would be my ideal tank. You just one big group of Tropheus. When you see Tropheus in the lake, they're often in a group, and it is just so amazing to see them in this group and as they're feeding. And I want to see that in my tank. Yep. And so I want, the bigger the group, the better. Cool. And I wouldn't worry about ratio. Number one, you want extra males. You should want extra males in your group, because that's going to take the pressure off your females. They're more apt to chase each other than they are, the males, than to pick on the females. If you only have a few males and they want to just pick on somebody, they're going to pick on everybody, and your females are what you have left. So that's not good. So I don't think ratio has anything to do with it. In the lake itself, the trophy, it kind of depends on the specific species, but just generally speaking, they have territories that are all butted up against each other. Okay, so you'll have a female here, you'll have a male here, you'll have another female, then maybe a male over here. And then it's these males that draw the females in right before they spawn, and they try to get them to, they like to let the algae grow on their rock, so that when the female comes in and eats that algae, then that puts her in spawning condition. That's when they spawn, and then she goes back to her territory. So when you can't really, it's pretty hard to create that in a tank, but having just males and females all in one tank, they're all in one lake, so they get along. It's not like the males are all chased over on this shore and the females are all over here. They're all intertwined.
Yeah. You've said a couple of times being within the lakes. Can you explain what it sort of feels like to see the cichlids in their native habitats versus in the aquariums? Are behaviours different? Obviously, they're more confined, but how is that transition between the two?
Well,
work
it is. It still amazes me every time I go to the lake and I see fish that I've kept in an aquarium in the wild. I mean, I just go crazy, because
Yeah.
I just think that is the coolest thing to think that, I've kept that fish,
Yeah.
Then to kind of reverse that, you hope to get some behaviors from the wild, but you're not going to get a lot. But you can get some. And for trophies, getting them up together and feed together, I think that's just absolute. That's one thing that I've seen in the wild that I really want my fish to do. And some of the bigger Lamprologus, Neolamprologus, when you see them hunting, and you have them in a big tank and you see that's pretty cool.
Cool. Can you explain the hunting methods?
Well, they're all pretty basic. They just hoover with their heads down,
Right.
You can just tell that, they're looking for something for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you can like Varibilichromis morii. There's a few places in the lake where that fish is like every square inch. And you can see the Altolamprologus fasciatus just coming in and, having a buffet. So it's you can see that where they tilt their head down and they just kind of track it and go for it.
Yeah. Cool. How many trips to the Rift Lakes have you been on and dived and been involved in that?
I have just fallen in love with the whole process. I mean, I think that I went because my friends went. And like, I'm the only one that's gone back because I had so much fun. It's absolutely just, it's, if you like to travel and traveling with fish people are so much fun. You have this common interest. When I first went to the lake, I couldn't even swim. I didn't have a camera that went underwater. But I still was able to halfway float and see some of my favorite fish. And when I went back home, before I went back home, I was already planning, all right, when can I get this going? I went to Lake Tanganyika first. Yeah. And so I had to go to Lake Malawi. I just wanted to do that really, really bad. So I went about 3 years later. I tried to get all my friends to go, anybody, please, because I didn't really want to go by myself, even though there was going to be a couple other people there. And I finally got my friend Doogie to go with me. Steve Lundblad from the Cichlid Exchange in Portland. He's a real big, or the Wet Spot, if you see that he has a store in Portland. Anyway, he and I go back way, way, way back. And my husband doesn't like to travel. He is a hermit, but he does very gracious about, if I want to take off with these fish guys and go. And so I talked Doogie into going with me, and we just had an absolute blast. And then after that, the first time I went to Africa, I went with Odd Conings. So after then I begged him to let me come to Malawi. He said, yeah. And then after that, it was every time he was taking a trip, he would invite me to go. And it was just kind of like, why not? I mean, he's inviting me to go. And now that you, as I've gone through this so many times, it's kind of like, if you don't go, then, you kind of get knocked off the list, and then, they never invite you back again. So, yeah. So, yeah, I've been to Tanganyika I think 9 times and Malawi 6 times.
Wow.
So,
fantastic. Yeah. Do you have a preference of lake, or do you just?
Well, it's really hard to for me to say one or the other's the favorite. They're really kind of different. Malawi is just so you're only 2 hours from the airport to the lake itself, which doesn't what you think, oh wow, 2 hours, okay. But when the first time I went to Lake Tanganyika, I was on the back of a flatbed truck for 16 hours to Impalungu. Okay. And then we had to get on a boat, and it was 2 hours to where we were staying. Okay, so I thought I'm never going to top that story, right? Never be able to top that one at all. So then I think it was 2010. Conings and I we were going to do Malawi, and then we had finally found a place. He had kind of lost a connection in Tanganyika, and he hadn't gone to Tanganyika for like 5 years because I was just bugging him. I said, we got to go back to Tanganyika. We got to go back. And so he had contacted this Lakeshore Lodge that we go in and out of now in Kapili. And so he said, okay, I want to go to Malawi, and we're going to start at the bottom of Malawi and take 2 weeks, and we'll get to the northern tip. And then, do you guys know Juan Miguel Artigas Azeas from the Cichlid Room Companion? He's from Mexico, super cichlid guy, totally into the Mexican cichlids and the Central American cichlids. He's amazing.
Yeah.
His name is Juan Miguel Artigas Azeas. We just call him Juan Me because we can't get all that out. But anyway, Odd said that Juan Me, okay, from Mexico is, excuse me, pick up a van and meet us at the northern part of the lake, and then we're going to drive to Kapili. And I said, okay, how long do you think that'll take? And he says, about 12 hours. I said, oh, okay, great, I'm in. So we spend the 2 weeks in Malawi. Juan Miguel meets us at the northern end. We load up in this van. I mean, it was like we had, we had 8 people. And everybody, men that dive put a woman to shame when it comes to luggage. Okay. I mean, they have so much. And Conings, he's got all this camera equipment and crap. We had the luggage like 4 feet over the top of the van. And when we pulled out of Malawi, we scraped the bottom of the road. And I said, this is going to be a fun trip. And it took us 36 hours to get to Kapili. And we drove it straight through. We did not, we stopped to pee, and that was about it.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, I was getting the guys out. I wouldn't let them go more than 2 hours at a time because they were like folded up in these seats. Okay. I got these middle-aged men that I have to get them out of the van and get them walking. Okay. And then back everybody back in the van. Oh my God. It was unbelievable. But once we got to Lake Tanganyika in Kapili, it was like, oh yeah, that was a little bit of a bad ride, but we're not going to worry about it. We're at this lake now. Oh my God. It was so awesome. So, you just put it behind you, and we're not going to worry about going, even though the 2 weeks we were in Tanganyika, we were pricing everything. How much would it cost for us to fly out of there? How much would it cost us to do? Because we knew the van we're never going to make it back, especially on the dirt roads. So what we ended up doing was sending the van ahead of us. And he did all the dirt roads. The pavement is like in Mbeya. And then we had like Ubered to the van after it was on the paved roads. Oh my God, it's crazy.
Do you collect over there, or are you there for diving and taking photos and enjoyment, so to speak?
Yeah, no, we're just having a good time. We don't have any way to do, you could collect the fish, but we don't have any way to keep them alive, on the boat. And then we don't have any way to ship them because we're not exporters. So that's kind of the drawback, but you get to see the fish. And then if there's something, you can't live without, then you're just going to have to come back home and find it and work with somebody that's importing fish that maybe they can get it for you.
Yeah. Rebecca has asked, have you ever kept any of the Carter Lake or Soda Lake cichlids?
No, I have not. I know a couple people that have, and they're supposed to be kind of fun to work with, actually. My friend Dr. Barlow was one of the first guys to keep them, and he really, really loved them. So I know they're a cool fish, but I just haven't found a place to put them.
Cool. And Rochelle would like to know, is there much of a color variations with the species that are tank raised to wild caught, like brighter or different patterns or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the fish are a little brighter, but it's because they're in the sunshine. It's just like if you buy fish out of a pond or buy cichlids out of a fish farm or anything where they're open to the actual sunlight, they do have more intense color.
Yeah.
And I'm just snorkeling, so I'm right in the really shallow area. So there's really not a lot of. I'm just basing my colors on the sunshine itself. I don't have a strobe or a flash or anything like that, and so it might be different if you dive down where it's darker, but up in the shallows, not so much.
Cool. And Zen would like to know if someone doesn't really travel very well but wants to go collecting at least once in their lives, is there a place that you would suggest someone to go and somewhere that you would not go?
Well, I really encourage people to go, and I always say it doesn't matter where you go. Just to be able to see fish in their wild habitat is just so amazing and so much fun, and so much fun to go with people. So a lot of the clubs do like native collecting in the States, where they go to the streams and there's a lot of native fish on the East Coast and also in the southern part of the States. And you can actually go to Florida where they have all these fish farms and all the fish have escaped in the waterways. And a lot of those fish are just, for free. If you catch them, you get them. And there's like giant Oscars and red devils and all sorts of stuff like that. So it just really depends. I just say who you go with really counts. You want to go with people you know and you trust, and maybe somebody that's gone there before. I'm big into, I wouldn't want to send anybody to Africa by themselves. I really think you need to go with someone. And one of the reasons I like going with Odd so much is because he knows, when I get ready to go for a swim, he's going to say, okay, you need to look for these fish and this is what you're going to see here. And if you don't have somebody telling you that, you don't really know, what you should be looking for. So it's really important to go with people that kind of know where you're going and what you're going to see.
Yeah.
But there's tons of that. I mean, it's a little different now. I mean, I've been collecting in Mexico before, which was really fun, but that was pre 9/11, where you could, carry a bag of fish on an airplane and you could cross a border with fish in the back of your car and nobody cared. It's a little harder to do that now.
So we've got one more question from the audience and we'll go back to our questions got set. What other fish besides cichlids and cynodontis are native in the lakes?
Well, there's about, I think 350 species of fish in the lake, and only like 240 are cichlids. One of the species that I really enjoy seeing are ladies. It's Lates. I think you guys say lattice, but it's ladies, and it's a big food fish. And they get huge in the lake. I mean, like 5 feet long and, 250 kilos or something like that. I mean, they're unbelievable, wonderful fish to eat. And there's about 5 or 6 species. Those are really fun to see. The killifish from Lake Tanganyika, Leptrichthys tansicanus, awesome fish. And they're everywhere. And I have had so much fun over the years because they're in the shallow water. I just love them. They are really, really great. And then there's a couple barbs type fish that are kind of crazy, pretty big. I mean, there's one there that gets about 5 pounds. And they cruise the shallow water. I don't know what they're doing, but I went to a site one time and they would not leave me alone. I mean, they were everywhere I went. Every time I thought I was going to get a good picture or something, I got photobombed by these damn barbs. It was crazy. And then also something very unique that I've seen in the lake is tetras. And I was up in the Mahali National Park, and I had heard that there were tetras in Lake Tanganyika, but I mean, I didn't have any idea. And I would have told you they were probably 1 or 2 inches long. These guys were huge. They were like 10 inches long.
Really?
Out of the Tanzania River. And they were absolutely amazing. They looked like giant congos with the big scales on them. Oh, they were so cool. And they just kind of saw me off on the side, and they just kind of came in and they swam around my head, about 3 or 4 times, and then they, took off. And they're native in the Tanzanian River, so they come into the lake and then they go back into the river, I guess.
Wow. Cool.
And there's a wide assortment of eels. In Lake Tanganyika, there's like 35 plus different eels. And I couldn't tell you one of them. Really, I have a love-hate relationship with eels because I don't like snakes. And I see a snake or an eel, I have to is that a snake or is that an eel, And then if it's an eel, it's like, whoo. And if it's a snake, I'm like, whoa, I'm going the other way.
Do you, in your fish house, have you branched out from cichlids from what you've seen in the lakes, or are you pretty on point just with cichlids?
I've been keeping Tanganyikan cichlids for so long that I've practically kept everything at one point or another time. And so I think that, and I have really loved the Tropheus more than anything else. And so that's why I'm kind of heavy on Tropheus, but I don't think so. I'd pretty much, had kept the fish over the years that I wanted to keep. I mean, there's some great fish from there, really, but I would think I knew about them before I went to the lake.
Yeah. So you haven't branched out to Cynodontous species or anything like that?
I do have Leucopennis, Cynodontous leucopennis. Gary has those going, and those are fun. And then I have gosh, I don't know if they're from the lake or catfish that it's a Cynodontous decorus.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure they're in the lake though. They might be in the rivers.
Sure.
But I have one of those too.
We've got some more questions from the chat, so we'll just continue working through these.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen a star sapphire in that color form in the wild?
No, I have not. I have a group of the star sapphires that I just absolutely adore, and they're really, really fun. And that flake that they have that they gain over their age was once some type of a bacteria, a virus, or a parasite or something, and they have maintained that different color, the ability to produce these flakes, and whatever caused them originally is not harmful or anymore to them. But at one time it was I can't remember. I think it might have been a bacteria.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Wow. Isn't nature amazing?
It is, totally. And to think that they would keep that coloration.
Yeah. That's crazy.
After they got rid of whatever it was. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah.
Weird, but very popular fish. And I like those.
Yeah. It's just speed. There we go. Have you seen any imbu puffers in the lakes?
No, I have not.
Okay.
And I'm not sure where they're at because I've been halfway around the lake, but I've never seen them.
Maybe they're in the other
every now and then. And the other one that's in there is bikers, are supposed to be a biker in Tanganyika too, and I have never seen that either.
Wow. How many? You've just briefly touched on this, but how many species of cichlids do you think you've kept over the years? If you put a rough number on that.
Oh, goodness. I don't know. Definitely a couple hundred species, that's for sure. Because in Malawi, there's 100 peacocks, right? And my husband is like so into the peacock, and he had to have every one there ever was. And they're such tank hogs because, if you're working with other peacocks, you got to keep them all separate. So you got to have a tank in between everyone. And then you got to have the baby fry tank, and then the medium-sized tank, and then, the breeder tank. And I've been there.
Okay. Do you have a preferred family of fish? That might be a slightly better way of answering the next one, as in like the Neolepologus or the Lanacaras, or is there a particular family of fish that you like more than others, or you're really interested in, other than Tropheus?
There's fish other than Tropheus. I gotta have my blinders on here, I truly love all fish. I really do. I love the centrals. They have so much personality, and they are really fun to work with to breed them and that type of thing. So I'm not gonna let you guys pin me down on one particular species.
Okay.
Other than trophies, I admit that.
This is a question for my interest because I'm really interested in Frontosa.
Oh,
I find when they're in aquariums, they're just so incredibly graceful and just an absolute pleasure just to enjoy them doing. They're just slow moving. I really enjoy that. Is that what you get from them in the lake as well? Just really slow herd of fish just moving through, or is it a totally different behavior from them?
See, I don't get to see the Frontosa because that's found quite deep, and I'm a floater. I'm on top. I'm on the very, very top. But it's kind of a standing joke between me and Conings because the Pyrosotis straelini, which is a scale-eating fish that mimics Tropheus, and so they kind of mimics Frontosa. It mimics Frontosa, and I often see those up in the shallow water. And when I'm half blind, but when it's quite a ways away, it looks like a Frontosa to me, And so I always get out of the boat and telling Conings that I saw a Frontosa. And of course he knows I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I did see Pyrosotis straelini. So now I've eaten Frontosa. I've seen a lot of Frontosas in the bottom of canoes. And apparently you've not seen the posts about Frontosa and their slow moving, that they're kind of slow fish.
Somewhat, yeah.
Oh, I've not seen it.
Where people give them a bad time. I mean, what a lot of people say about Frontosa over here, I guess, heaven forbid that you guys knock your fish. I'll knock ours. Well, first of all, they're just not the smartest fish in the aquarium. Okay. And it takes about 5 years before they're truly sexually mature. I mean, they might practice for a couple of years, but it's like 5 years. And then they're too old. So you just have this little tiny window, and people just work so hard at it. So anyway, I always like to give Frontosa people a hard time, even though I personally keep Frontosa and I keep Kigoma, which is the true Frontosa. None of this, what's the fake name for Frontosa? I can't remember now, but they're all Frontosa according to Conings.
I was going to ask you, do you keep a species tank of them? And obviously you do, so that's cool.
Yes. Yeah, I really like the Kigoma. I don't know. They have a lot of color. And I can't believe the money that they get for the Frontosa on the Congo side or even down out of Zambia. I mean, if you want wild fish, I mean, they're horribly expensive. Yeah. And I hate it the way they collect them. I'm really against that because it's not very humane.
How do they collect them?
Well, they're found so deep that they can't bring them up right away or they'll spit out their guts. So, so they have to put them in a cage and float it and go back and, get it. So you have 25 Frontosas in a, 24 by 24 cage floating for a week.
Yeah, that's my deal.
It's just not a good sight.
The other thing I have to ask is, what does Frontosa taste like?
It's a very nice, it's a very nice white fish. I love it. I have never ate a bad cichlid. I'm a pescatarian. I don't eat red meat or chicken or anything. I only eat fish. And they're so good to me when I go over there because they just, keep bringing me fish for every meal. And so I have ate a lot of cichlids out of Tanganyika, but also, one time I went to South America up the Rio Negro, and God, we ate the cichlids all the way up and back on that. It was amazing. So I am quite the I'm proponent for cichlid for dinner. Yes, bring it on. Like Belongichromis, I have to get that in there. That's like the best cichlid ever.
You just mentioned you did some time up the Rio Negro. Where else have you adventured around the world other than the Rift Lakes?
Just Mexico collecting fish and the Rio Negro. I was on the Rio Negro for like, I don't know, it was like 25 days, little tiny boat. And I was with Conings and Juan Miguel, my two best fish buddies ever. And we had an absolute blast. And it's pretty scary snorkeling in there. I think it really kind of helped my confidence in snorkeling back in the lakes after I had gone to the Rio Negro, because, the water's dark and you can't see what's coming at you. And so I found it kind of frightening.
Yep, I can understand that.
So what's the kind of visibility? What's the visibility like in the Rio Negro?
I'm sorry?
Kind of how far can you see when you're snorkeling?
Well, it depends on where you are, but generally, the water is clear, but it's brown. You just kind of it's got a brown tint to it,
Yeah.
And if you get into a little lagoon or like a fish hole, it's not so bad. But a lot of places, it's basically a floodplain. So you have all this grass and trees and weeds and everything. So when you get out of the boat, if it's shallow, you're in all of that scary stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're in Malawi and in Tanganyika. I mean, the rocks are bare and, you can see for a mile. And so that's why
totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you discuss a particularly memorable moment that you've had while you've been observing fish in their natural habitat?
Well, the best for me is seeing trophies gather up and eat together. And, it's what I want to see at every site. And it's generally in the afternoons that they do that. And it's because they can get more food this way rather than one fish just going to a rock and he's going to get chased off, because every rock is owned by somebody. And so they'll get chased off the rocks as a single fish. But when 50 trophies land on a rock and start eating the algae like there's like no tomorrow, the owner of the rock really can't do anything to move them. So it's really fun. Also, I've seen this behavior in Petrochromis fasciolatus, and they're twice as or 3 times bigger than a Tropheus, and they also will gather up and feed in a herd, and it is just so much fun to watch. So I think that's my best.
Nice one. Very good. Cool. What ways do you think that your time diving in the lakes has influenced or shaped the way that you keep aquariums?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I'll teach you a couple things. One is that not all fish go together, and there's a reason. And the other is just that you can see how they spawn and what kind of rock habitat they had. You can create that same habitat in your aquarium, and it doesn't even have to be rocks. It can be fake rocks or whatever, And so once you kind of see, fish like an angle to spawn on, or he's got to have a perch to see what's going on. Those are the kind of things that you can pick up and bring back home to your own aquarium.
For the people out there that haven't kept cichlids and are interested in keeping cichlids, what would be some basic advice you would give them to get involved and get into cichlid keeping?
Well, I always say that you got to get a big enough tank. Okay. People, they'll tell me they're going to get a tank. They're going to get a fish tank, and then it's like, I want Oscars and, and how big is the fish tank? It's 30 gallons, and it's just like, So I really think that you need to do your research. And the other thing is when you're trying to pick what you want to put in your tank, I really strive for like the cohesive tank where everybody tries to get along. You probably you got to have one fish that you want to build a tank around. And so, you make yourself a list of the fish first, and then you limit it down to maybe the top 2 or 3. Then you should check access because, you might be lusting over something, and it's going to be impossible to get. So then do a little research and see what kind of track you're on there. Is this fish easy to get? Then you get I call that your showpiece in your tank. That you get your showpiece. Then you bring in things that are going to go with that showpiece. You have to really bite your finger, because you can't get a fish because it's yellow, or you can't get a fish because it's blue. You got to really kind of keep it in the rationalize the reason why it's going to fit in that tank. And a lot of that has to do with your territory, your top, your middle ground, and your bottom ground.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that like to keep mixed Malawi tanks, for example, and booners with haps and that sort of stuff. How do you foresee that working as a general rule?
I think I think there's some things that would work, that would work out. Mm-hmm. But again, it's going to take a little bit of research.
Yeah.
But there's lots of possibilities there. And I think a group, and tank size is another issue there. There's a lot of things you can't do in a 55-gallon tank. You're going to need a little bit larger tank, but you should be able to keep a group of Mbuna and a group of I would say haps, because peacocks are just so skittish and pickish, and if they feel threatened, then they're just going to go over and hang in the side of the tank. So haps are probably a better choice with Mbuna.
Cool. All right. Aquarium societies and your involvement with them, how has that come about?
Well, it's just been absolutely amazing. I mean, I am very pro Fish Club. I just think I would not have met anybody that I know or hang around with today if I hadn't met them at Fish Club. Mm-hmm. So once I joined my local club, and then we kind of were getting into the cichlids, and we found out that there was a national cichlid club. We signed up right away, and we got the publication and bulletins that you would get on a monthly basis from the clubs, and we didn't have a lot of fish clubs on the West Coast. Fish keeping is much more popular in the Midwest. Everybody has a basement, and they can put their fish down in the basement, and the East Coast. So we don't have as many people on the West. And if you wanted to go to a national convention, they were generally in the East. And but in the long run, that's kind of better, because there's more fish people, and there's kind of a better selection of fish too. It can really a lot of fun. So anyway, I just decided that we should go to the national convention just to check it out. And I have gone every year since. It's just so much fun. I mean, you're in a hotel with 200 other people with a like mind, and they all like to drink and party and have a good time, and you just talk cichlids 24/7. It's so much fun. So I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. And then, as most people do, once they get more into the club, then they want to get more into the mechanics of the club, and maybe get on a committee or run as an officer or whatever. It's all fun.
Cool. Isn't it fantastic when a whole bunch of people that are interested in the same thing just get together and just nerd out for several hours or days or whatever? Yes.
It is so crazy. I mean, you just see people just in such intense conversations, because these people have had this on their mind for so long, but they've never been able to find anybody that they could say it to that would actually understand what they're saying. And I killed this fish. I did everything. Yeah, I know. I kept it. Yeah. I killed it too. Yeah. So
I get a very small amount of it when people come into the shop and they've come in just to have a quick look or buy some food or something, and all of a sudden 45 minutes or an hour later we're still here talking about some random thing. So I get a little smidgens of it throughout the day, which is always fun, but to have it when so many are in one room or one area together is just next level of awesomeness.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It's where you really meet the movers and shakers in the world. I mean, that's where I met Conings, was at a fish convention. I mean, who knew that we were going to be buddies? And when you go on these collecting trips, you know, it's kind of like the cream of the crop at the convention, and you're hanging out with all these really, really cool guys. And so, yeah, it's just too much fun. It's almost, the people thing is almost as fun as the fish thing, for sure.
For those that were not aware, American Cichlid Association convention is in July 25th to 28th in Cincinnati. It happens to be over the time of my birthday, but I won't be there. I'm sorry.
Oh, darn bummer, because it's going to be a blast. And Cincinnati is one of those places where it's, you know, it's kind of the heart of cichlid country. You know, there's so many people there that are working with cichlids, and they'll all be able to drive there. So they just load up their station wagon with tons of fish, and they bring tanks and set them up in their room, and people run up and down the hallways looking at fish and buying fish. And, you know, people got beer in their room, and so you can go and have a beer and hear their latest fish story. And yeah, it's just
living
great.
their best fish life.
Yeah, but it's great because you get to meet, you know, like this year, Melanie Stissany is going to be at ACA. I mean, she is like, woo, fish god of the world. And so I'm really excited to see her. Odd Conings is talking, and I think there's just a whole bunch of people.
Cool.
It's going to be good.
You're an honorary member of aquarium societies, correct?
Yeah. When you're there forever, they just give you a membership.
How did that come about?
You get your own chair.
Just pure longevity in that's coming about, or contributions?
Yeah, totally. Well, in the American Cichlid Association, I would believe that the reason I got a fellowship there was for raising funds for cichlid research and cichlid conservation. So, and then we would raise all these funds, and then we donate the money to their funds. And we've just been really, really lucky to be able to extort this money from the guys at the convention. That's our big money raiser, is at the convention, because everybody's gathered there together.
Cool. And is that via Babes in the Cichlid Hobby?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and speak to that for a little bit?
Let's see. We're like, 1990. Yeah, we're almost 30. We've been around for almost 30 years. That's crazy.
Wow.
So back 30 years ago, the ACA convention was, I believe it was in San Antonio, Texas that year. And anyway, us girls have kind of been hanging out for 4 or 5 years, and we're always trying to get the guys, get the guys involved, because there's some really neat fish keeper guys there, and we wanted to be in the, the middle of the action. And so we would just, play practical jokes on them. We'd have a midnight speaker, X-rated speaker, something going on every year. And then, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago, we started doing a silent auction. So we would tell the guys, just bring all your crap that you don't want from your fish house anymore, or your fish room, or your hobby, and bring it in, and we're gonna sell it in a silent auction and give the money to the cichlid research and cichlid conservation. And so that's been a big success. People, they bring us books and equipment and old dirty t-shirts, and we spread it all out and sell it over the weekend. And then we also have an oral auction, because we have the silent auction, so we have to have an oral auction, and we kind of bill that as a rare fish auction. We do probably about 75 bags of fish, and we try to insult the guys until they'll just give us all their money and go to town. Yeah, it's great. So in the oral auction, we can really make some good money.
What motivated you to start Babes in the Cichlid Hobby?
Well, we were just kind of picking on the boys, and then we, in the hospitality room, we'd like pass the hat around for the funds for the cichlid research and cichlid conservation, and they would throw some money in there, and we were just trying to make more. We're just trying to make more money, and And so over the years, it just kind of, and then all of a sudden they think we're their fundraisers, so they're really supporting us to keep going, to keep it rolling. So we've put probably over $200,000 in their research
That's
and
amazing.
funds.
Mm.
And we've used some of that money. We also been a big donator, which this fund is not around anymore, the Stewart Grant Foundation that Konings ran. And we donated a lot of money to that. And we were able to go back and replant the, I don't know what it's called now, but Chidongo psilocybe, which it's only found on that one reef. And it had totally been overcollected. I think I personally made like 3 trips to replant fish there.
Wow.
Out in the middle of Malawi. And so that was really a big deal. And plus protection in the national park in Malawi, which is just so critical. I mean, it's a UNESCO site. And sadly, the people are just starving. And so they're fishing, right? They're not supposed to fish in the national park, but they do. And everybody has a different set of rules about, where's legal to fish, where's not legal to fish. And so we were trying to protect a couple of the islands inside the national park, and we were pretty successful for about 5-6 years. But then we were using these net busters, where if you throw your net in and it gets hooked on the net buster, then you can't get your net back up. So that would keep the fishermen out of there. And but in the end, they wouldn't let us set them anymore. Conservation is a 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. It's very depressing.
So you said that you've done some fish planting. What does that involve, and how does that come about? What's the process?
Well, it's something that you have to be there's a lot of rules and regulations. Number one, the only reason we were allowed to replant those fish is because they were raised in Malawi at the Stewart Grant Foundation. Mm-hmm. Okay. If they were raised in, we all know that psilocybe is an endangered fish, and many hobbyists are maintaining that species. Plus they're breeding it in the fish farms in Asia and in Florida. So in the hobby, the fish seems pretty safe, but to keep it safe, but they were like gone in the natural place. So we tried to take them back. So if the fish, but now in Tanzania, we've got a couple situations in Lake Tanganyika where we'd like to restock some fish, like Tropheus duboisii or Tropheus, the Tanzanian Morago. But they're like, no, you can't put the fish back in the water once the fish are out of the water. So yeah, but maybe someday.
When you're planting these fish, how many are you planting?
Well, there's the first time we went, I think we only had 30 fish.
You're right.
And then the next time we maybe had 50.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, are you guys familiar with Larry Johnson in Canada? He goes to Malawi every year. Yeah. Larry, there's a few years we didn't go to Malawi, but Larry went and took psilocybe every year. And I think the last year he went, he took a bunch of fish. And the last time they were at the site, the visibility was really, really bad, but they felt like that the population was doing okay. But the sad part about that is there's no fish on that reef. We've planted these fish, and then all of a sudden you see these fish listed as wild on a export list that just burns you.
Yeah. I could see that being very, very frustrating to put their work into to have that as the return.
So that's a bummer. But yeah, it's something that it sounds like a quick fix, but there's a lot of paperwork involved in it. There's a lot of things you got to be really careful about. Mm-hmm. And if you're just going to throw them out there and somebody's going to recatch them, it doesn't make sense.
So have you returned to anywhere that you've planted them before? Like, have you released fish and then went back the following year and noticed that they've? Yeah,
we went every year. We went for like 7 years in a row, and I think they took fish every time.
Good.
I was only involved in like the first 3 or 4. Then I spent some time in Malawi on what did they call it? Oh, it's the blue cichlid. Odd and I went there for a couple of weeks, and we tried to put buoys around the Nakatanga Island, and it was just a mess, and it was very depressing. And we have not been back, so I haven't been to Malawi for that reason. I'm just so depressed.
It sounds like you've been involved in quite a few various conservation efforts in that area. Are you feeling that the work that you're doing is getting some progress, or is it just roadblock after roadblock all the way through?
It's roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
Yeah.
You know, you think you got it, there's something going, and it sounds good, and you know, it's just so hard to take it to that next step to get everybody. And in Africa, you know, I mean, you know, I must love Africa. I mean, because who else do you know has gone as many times as I have? I just love it there. But it's just a slow, and it's different, you know, different sense of urgencies. And so it's just really hard to get anything done.
Yeah. If there's other people that are interested in getting involved in this sort of conservation work, where would be a good place to start for them?
Right now, one place that's being very successful in Malawi is Ripple. I don't know if you've heard of Ripple or not.
No.
Ripple, they've been going now probably more than 5 or 6 years. And they work with the village. And what they're trying to do is get the village to say, okay, here's your village. And off of your village, you can go this far and do all your fishing. And you're in charge of that water right there. And don't let anybody else come in there and fish. And you just use these waters here. You can't go over to Joe's and fish. You know, you live in this village. And then they go to the next village and they tell them the same thing. It's been quite successful in the north, but not as successful in the south. And the south is where the national park is. And that's where it needs to work, because I don't see how I can't, you know, I'm even ticked off at UNESCO. This has been going on for 5 or 6 years, and UNESCO has not pulled their rating of that national park. And that's Malawi's whole claim to fame, is that, you know, it's a UNESCO national park. But it's going to hell in a handbag.
Okay, putting it nice and bluntly. Can you share some of the impact of the writing that you've had in the community for growth and stuff like that? I haven't quite phrased that quite the right way.
Yeah,
you do a lot of writing, but how has it impacted? There we go. The community as a whole.
On my writing,
Mm.
what? I'm not sure I understand your question.
How do you think the articles and things that you've written has impacted the community?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I think I'd like to think that, you know, when I write an article, they just enjoy reading it. I like to tell a little story and have a little humor in there and that type of thing. So I hope that people, you know, just enjoy it for following me along on my little adventure, you know. On most of the stuff that I've written lately, so, you know, the last 5, 6 years has mostly been swimming in Lake Tanganyika. But I've done Ask Pam for, I don't know, close to, let's see, gosh, it's almost getting close to 30 years. And Ask Pam is with Juan Miguel on Cichlid Room Companion. And that first started actually in my regional cichlid club, the Pacific Coast Cichlid Association. And the editor talked me into doing this column so that, you know, because it's hard to fill up your monthly bulletin if you don't have something. And so we did this question and answer column. And then Juan Miguel said, I got to have it for a Cichlid Room Companion. So, you know, so I said, okay. And with that, I just hope that, you know, I give a good opinion, a common sense, something that's more common sense, and to help people along, and try to, you know, give them an answer one-on-one versus, you know, like on a forum or on Facebook where, you know, 55 people respond. I think those people are more confused than they were before they asked the question. So anyway, I like to think I you know, answer stuff that way. But since you know, Facebook has come along or whatever, Ask Pam is not as popular as it once was. You know, because people just don't go to forums, and that type of things. But I have a lot of people that still email me with questions. I have a lot of people that send me messages on Facebook when they have a question. So I relish every question. I always want to give an answer and help out if I can.
Off topic, which this wasn't a question that was going to be asked, but it's just popped up. How have you found the likes of Facebook and social media to be useful or not useful to the fish keeping hobby as a whole?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of fish keeper you are. Okay. I am, pretty much diehard fish keeper. I am a purist. I only speak Latin. I don't want to hear, the super blue, the better than blue, the I'm better blue than you're blue. So I get very, I scroll by a lot of posts, let's put it that way, because I just feel like if I can't say something nice, I'm not going to say anything at all. So I try to, if I have something to offer, I will definitely put something in. But I'm just like, I wonder how people keep fish sometimes. I mean, when you read some of these posts, it's just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I mean, it's just like, oh my God. And so, gosh, true confessions. Yeah, I just scroll by. So no, can't do it. Can't do it.
Fair enough. I know that there is many people that feel that way, and there's many people that feel the opposite way because it's obviously brought more people together. So it's I think a bit of a double-edged sword for those reasons as well.
Yeah, and I think it depends on whether I know you or not either. I mean, if you ask a question and you're getting 50 answers, do I need to offer any more? Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, it's been ticked off. My answer's been ticked off 4 times. So just
right. So I don't need to support it or whatever. Yeah. So it depends. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
But I love to gab and I love to talk about cichlids, and I love to so I'm all in if somebody else is, but I do have a few rules. Like you can't mix your fish and you need to speak Latin.
Cool. What of your articles that you've written has been the one that you've been the most proud of?
The last one. It's the last article. I'm always most proud of the last article because I feel like every time I write, I get better, a little better, Yeah. And it's usually because something happened and I want to share it. So it was such a good experience, but I would say, yeah, it's the last one. The stuff every now and then I'm going back through my archives or whatever, and I'll look at an article that I wrote 10 years ago and I wrote that. It's hard for me to believe. So anyway, yeah.
Speaking of looking back at articles that you've written, do you look back at them sometimes and go, well, that was wildly inaccurate because of new information that's come forward, or you're still pretty solid on everything previously? Is that always a constant learning when it comes to that, or I don't want to say maxed out because everyone's always learning, but how does looking back on some of them go for you?
Well, I just think, wow, I've become a much better writer, and I am actually communicating better, and so I think I look at that. I look at what I wrote, and it's kind of like, I could have worded that, a little differently, or whatever. So I think I have it better together now. I probably don't, but I think I do.
You've received awards like Author of the Year.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and how does that feel?
That is through the Federation of American Aquarium Societies. So all the fish clubs would belong to this one network called FOSS, Federation of American Aquarium Societies. And the one thing that they would do was give out publication awards. So it was like the Oscars, and so they would get these, they would get a panel together, and then every club would send in their publication, and then they would give out awards, and they would do it on a yearly basis. And it was fantastic. It would really, once you get an award for writing, and you just want to sit down and crank out 10 more articles, So I had asked Pam in my regional cichlid club, the Pacific Coast Cichlid Association, and that ran in there for like 10 or 15 years. So that would be nominated, you know, for a continuing column. They would have it like best of publication. In most clubs would do every other year or every other month they would do a publication. So based on that year, they would send in 6 publications that they did, and then they would get, you know, and then who had the best Breeders' Award Program article. You know, if you're doing the Breeders' Award Program and you wrote an article, you could get more points. And so, you know, some of them would be 3 lines, or someone would write a novel about spawning the fish. So stuff like that. You know, and then the editor, who the editors were, they would be nominated, and the graphics designer. And yeah, it was really a big thing. And so then they would go through and you know, give out all these awards. And one of the awards was, if you were writing, you know, I was writing Breeders' Award articles. I was writing just regular articles about fish, plus my column. So, you know, then they would grade you on points overall, or what, I don't know. And then you're the author of the year. So,
and just like that,
it really puts a lot of fish clubs to shame, the way the Americans do it, I think. And you know, we've got a decent fish society kind of scene in the UK, but nothing compared to what you're just talking about with the award schemes and the breeders schemes or anything like
well,
that.
I don't think they do it anymore. You know, this was back in, you know, this is back in the day when the only way you could communicate with anybody was through a bulletin or a meeting invitation or something like that, versus now where, you know, this was like before email or anything. So it kind of goes back a ways. And not to mention, there were a lot more fish clubs then too. And so, you know, they would have, you know, there was probably 50, 60 clubs that were sending entries in. So yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. The golden era.
Another question from the What viewers. Has there been a book written or produced by another fish keeper that has really impressed you or inspired you? I'm sure there's probably several.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that I'm an odd Conings girl. Okay, so I think, you know, the sun sets and rises in Conings. And he's a very dear friend, and you know, he cracks me up. He's a really funny guy. Anywho, yeah, I mean, I don't go anywhere without his book. Okay, I mean, if anything comes up, I want to look it up right now. You know, or anybody asks me a question, I got to look it up in the book and see what Coney says about it first. Even though, you know, there's people that don't like Conings, but I always say, you know, the thing about Odd is that at least he gives you a place to start the argument. Okay. There, you know, there's how many books are there on Lake Tanganyika? He's really the only guy that's done anything extensive on that. And you may not agree with him, but at least he's giving you a point to start your argument.
Yeah. It's a pretty valid point. You might not agree with XX author, but it gives a point to begin conversation with.
Yeah,
that's a really, really good way of looking at publications and as a whole. But yeah, it's a really good way of approaching things like that.
Yeah, and I like to tell people, you know, when they're getting in, you know, people just don't buy books like they used to. But when the books was a big deal, but even today, if you really want to get into these fish, you know, you need some type of a manual to learn about the fish or whatever. So either, you know, even if you have the book on your iPad or whatever, and so you get people that, you know, Conings is very popular, but there's other people too. It's just like Facebook with the Cichlid Room Companion. You know, I mean, I think that is the best cichlid site ever. But Greg Bauer over at Tanganyika Cichlid, I mean, what a site that he has going there. I mean, it's absolutely fabulous that, you know, you can go back and forth between and get some points and learn stuff about the species from 2 different opinions. A lot of times everybody agrees on it, but he points out that, you know, Conings leans this way and somebody else leans the other way. And so it's good. It's all good.
Is there any, you just mentioned a couple of sites, is there any particular websites that you find particularly fantastic for people to really learn from?
Well, I really, really like the Cichlid Room Companion, but you have to get a membership to belong to that. But it truly is the most up-to-date cichlid site there. And right behind it would be, and only because I'm a part of the Cichlid Room Companion, and I am totally devoted to Juan Miguel. He is the curator of the site. But I love Greg Bauer, and he's got a lot of good information on his site. And if I got to dig deeper, Fish Base is a site I like to go to, which is Kuhlander and those boys. So I have an open mind. I want to know. I want to know everything I can, and then make a decision. Come to my own conclusion.
Fair enough. Cool.
And doing that is much easier when you're reading something static. When you go online, like Facebook, for information, there's that much noise that comes back at you. It is really difficult to base, an opinion on everything, because a lot of it is just opinion. It's not based on any experience or fact. So when you pick up a book, you can rely on that book because somebody's dedicated time and effort into that. Yeah. So, it's far better doing it that way than it is to just go online and
there's so many, there's a lot of ways to keep fish and be successful. I'm not saying that everybody's got to do it, the way I do it. I have certain things that people probably think I'm crazy. So, you kind of got to have an open mind on that and use a little common sense.
Falling back to your times in the lakes, what was your first trip to see cichlids in the wild, and how was that experience for you?
Oh, God. Well, the first time, so the Babes of the Cichlid Hobby is basically me, Caroline Estes, and Pam Marsh. And in the the early 2000s, I think it was 2000. And Caroline told me that we're going to Mexico and we're going to meet Rusty Wessel. I don't know if you guys know Rusty Wessel or not, but he's like the king of swordtails and cichlids in the Central American area. And he has gone to Mexico, 1,000 times. And Caroline said, we just got to go. I mean, doesn't it sound like fun or whatever, And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, crossing the Mexico border, and how are we going to get in, how are we going to get there? And, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm a little bit of a picky eater, and, I just don't know if it's going to work. Well, I just kind of shining her on and thinking, okay, Rusty's never going to go for this in the long run. So it's probably not going to happen. And then it kept getting closer and closer. And Caroline's going, you need to get a ticket, because her idea was that Pam lives in North Carolina and me, Pam, live in California, and she lives in Austin. So we were going to fly to Austin. And then her boyfriend at the time spoke really, really good Spanish, and he would drive us from Austin down to Mexico to meet Rusty.
Right.
So I was like, but I couldn't figure out a way to get out of it, I mean, there just really wasn't any way that I could, that I thought I could get out of it, and save my face or whatever. So I just said, all right, I'm going to do it. And so I flew to Austin. Okay. Oh my God. And then the next day we get in this Jeep and we drive to the Mexican border, and we had to drive around like 3 hours to try, because we're taking a vehicle into Mexico. You have to have this certain insurance and, all this rigmarole or whatever. Well, we finally made it in to Mexico, but then all of a sudden we're on the road and it's very, very dark. We were not planning on being in the middle of Mexico. in the dark. We thought we would get to the place that we need to go. We were going to Tananol. And I don't know, it was probably a 5 or 6 hour drive from the border, maybe a little longer. And so anyway, we just kept going and kept going and kept going. And we finally got to the hotel. Okay, so then we're there. There's like 12 guys, and they had 3 cars, and then we had our car. And so, we just got to, and Rusty's leading the group, and he's saying, okay, we're gonna go to oh God, I can't remember any of the sites now. Thomas Sopo or someplace like that. And so we would just take off, and we had walkie-talkies. And so we could talk to each other in the cars, which was, that was pretty cool. But we'd get behind like a truck that had fully loaded with cane, and the roads were like so narrow and going around, and there's crosses all along the road where people have been killed. And, it was crazy. And then we would get to these sites, and generally it was like a swimming hole. It was like a recreational park or whatever for the Mexican people. And we're rolling in with our nets and all of this stuff. Oh my God, it was amazing. So anyway, we met the guys, I think on Sunday, and we spent an entire week going. We spent a lot of time in the car because we would go where we're going, and then we'd have to come back to the hotel and back and forth. And then the guys wanted to go out and party every night. And, but it was like a mini convention to me. It was like a mini ACA convention, and we were collecting fish like there was no tomorrow. We had so many fish that we had our own hotel room just for the fish. And and what they would do is they would collect all these fish, and then they would keep them for a couple days to clean them completely out, so there's no more shit in them. And then we would pack them in breathable bags, and then that had to be labeled, and then we had to set them in a pile. And I mean, we had so many fish in this room, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. So then when the guys left, they took, because we were just following along, they took all the fish they wanted, and then they said, okay, you can have whatever's left. And so we went into the and shit, we still had like 300 bags of fish. I mean, it was just, and so so here we are with these guys, and they're getting ready to leave, and they got too much crap, and they're throwing their crap out of the car because they just said we don't have enough room for the fish and all this crap. Like when I say crap, I'm sorry, like a seine net or a big huge net that would like go across a river, And my girlfriend Caroline, I mean, she's such a pack rat. So she said, "Oh God, I gotta have that net or whatever, So we were in like a Jeep Cherokee. She rips the seat out of the Jeep Cherokee, and she puts this net down underneath the seat, and and puts it back. And then, oh my God. And then they said that the best thing with these breathable bags is you can't have the bags touch each other. Okay. They have to remain away. So we have all these fish in these breathable bags. So the best thing to keep them in is like a beer, where your beer, a 6-pack of beer, take out the beer, and then you put your bag,
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then they're separated, and the bags can still breathe. So we had like 300 bags. So we had like, it looked like we had drank, 20 or 30 cases of beer, to keep all these fish. Oh my God. So then we take off, and, we got our little driver, and we're heading back. And so we're about halfway back to the border, and he looks at us, and he says, okay, girls, you need to get your story together, because once we cross the border, they're going to have you guys in a room. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to separate you and ask you these questions to trip you up. And I noticed that, or I didn't notice that. This is the guy talking to us that's driving, Caroline's boyfriend. I noticed one of you girls have 2 bottles of tequila, and you're only allowed to take 1 tequila over the border, and they're going to pull you over for that. So maybe we should stop and get rid of that bottle of tequila. I mean, 3 hours later, I mean, the guy has come up with everything that's going to happen to us, once we hit the border. So we finally get the border, and the traffic is like backed up really bad. I mean, we must have waited in line maybe 2 hours, and he just kept going on and on about, what are you going to tell them, how you got these fish and da 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 da. And finally, Caroline said, I think I want to drive. So here we are in the middle of this line where they're watching you. I was smoking out the window. I just don't know what we're gonna do. I got to get the story straight now. Who did what? And Caroline said she was going to drive. She said, "You get over here. I'm going to drive through the border." And so it was just crazy. We get up to the border, and Caroline just starts talking to the guy. Hey, how's it going? We just got back. We're so glad to be back. We can't wait to get over to Carl's Jr. and get a burger. And the guy just waved us on, But I mean,
after all that worry,
God, we are gonna lose it here, Yeah, pretty scary. Because those guys have had problems taking fish out of Mexico before too, and after that. But they were flying in and out. We were driving. Yeah. So that was all pre 9/11, though. God, you couldn't do it today. They would get you.
No.
But
that sounds
that was so fun. So anyway, I just had the best time in the whole world. I thought this is just the greatest thing ever. And so that was in we went in April. So when we get to the ACA convention that summer in July, we're like, okay, Rusty, when are we going again? We want to go. And he just said, no, we're not taking you girls back. Don't see anything in the future for that. And we were devastated. We had so much fun. And, Rusty just shined us on. So we went over and talked to Odd, and we were kind of crying, Rusty, he won't take us back to Mexico, da, 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 da. And he said, okay, let's go to Africa. So that's when we planned our first trip to Africa. And then guess who went with us? Rusty. After we signed on, it was oh no, I can't let these girls go without me. So anyway, no, I love Rusty Wessel. He's a sweetheart. But it's pretty funny story because, I had no idea. I mean, I wanted to get out of it so bad, and I had such a good time. And then I was after that, I've just been the bandwagon leader. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So
yeah, it sounds like a heck of an experience, and clearly one that will never ever be forgotten. We've had another question from Jason. Yeah. What is the current, as a 2 or 3 part of this one, what is the current state of Lake Tanganyika? Is it overfishing having an impact, or is it being better managed now? And do you think the hobby can help in terms of breeding programs to reduce wild caught fish demands? And he loves your videos on YouTube.
Oh, thank you, Jason. I love you too. Unfortunately, it's kind of bad on Tanganyika because the population is just it triples every 5 or every 10 years. Every 10 years, I think the population triples. When I first started going to the lake, there were not as many people as there is now, and the only way for 90% of the employment opportunity is fishing. So it's really kind of a sad situation. So yeah, it is definitely being overfished. You've got 4 countries on one lake, okay, and none of them can agree, what the best answer is. And so right now, last year they did this too, where they would not allow any fishing for 3 months, and they're going to do that again this year. It starts on May 15th to August 15th, no fishing. Which is, I just don't know how they do it because I don't know what the people are eating. That's what I worry about is the people. If they can't fish, then they can't eat. So they've got to work harder on fish farming, and they've got to work harder on a little bit of agriculture. But see, the agriculture thing is not good for the lake either because of the pollution that goes into the lake. So I don't know. I mean, what can you do? I mean, that's their livelihood is the fishing and living on that lake. So,
what about the
stark contrast to the? Sorry, I would say it's a stark contrast to the live fish collecting in South America, where that's encouraged because it's benefiting a lot of the live fish populations. But in Africa, it's having the opposite effect.
Right, and they don't farm any of these fish. You know, at Lakeshore, they're getting into farming the tilapia, and hopefully after that, maybe they can do a couple species of fish. But it's impossible. I mean, I saw that where the. Let me go back because he had the two-part questions. So, so the overfishing is it's a nightmare. The fish collection for the ornamental hobby, I'm not sure whether they can do. I don't think they can fish during this grace or fishing ban period of time. They cannot collect either, I don't think. And so it does help the fish kind of come back, but I just worry about the people, you know, not being able to eat. So as far as breeding programs, you know, I don't know. People want wild fish. There's some people that just want wild fish. You just can't get away from it. I think once you get into the hobby and you know it a little bit better and you understand the logistics of it and that maybe it's really not necessary, and especially Tanganyikans. I mean, all the Tanganyikans available in the U.S. are probably bred in the U.S. and of course they're going to be much easier to keep when they're born in an aquarium than when you bring them in for wild. But there's just a lot of people that just they don't care. They want, you know, wild fish. So I don't think wild fish are necessary. I think that if you're a good breeder, you know, you shouldn't have a problem. But it is something that is an issue with people want these wild fish. And it seems like the more rare it is, the more they want it. And so a lot of times I try not to specifically talk about which fish is at most at risk, because then somebody wants to go buy that. So
yeah, makes sense. It's the new shiny magpie object scenario.
Yeah.
Cool. You visited Lake Malawi and Tanganyika. I think the count was sort of 15 times between them, give or take.
mm-hmm.
How do your experiences compare, whether it's from lake to lake or whether it's from trip to trip?
Well, every trip is different because there's always different people on the trip. I mean, there's a few of us that have gone together several times or whatever, but generally we have 8 people. And so there's always, you know, 2 or 3 people that are new or, you know, or that you don't know. And so it's you know, it's really kind of about the group people. But again, you have 8 people with a like mind that are, you know, are interested in the fish. And, you know, and because I've gone, you know, they like to quiz me and all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, it's and you're going to a different place. I mean, we go in and out of Kapili on Lake Tanganyika, and you go in and out of Salima or Red Zebra Lodge when you're in Malawi. But your destination could be, you know, a totally different place. So because both of those lakes are so huge, you can't really do the whole lake on one trip.
Yeah.
You got to do multiple trips.
Yeah. I'm naturally assuming that little different bays and coastlines of each lake inhabit totally different ecosystems to an extent, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that, you know, I think the shallow rocky habitat is the same all the way around the lake.
Right, okay.
Next level. So you have your levels that the fish are fine. It's more of a depth thing.
Right,
I think
okay.
where you get the different fish. So basically, you know, you have the same players. Okay, so in the shallow rocky habitat, you know, I'm going to see nothing but Tropheus and Petrochromis and a few lamps and stuff like that. You know, I'm not going to see the Frontosa. I'm not going to see probably any Synodontis or anything like that. You're going to have to go deeper, and I'm just a floater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So somebody planning their trip for the first time, like this, they me and Cam are planning a trip to Tanganyika. What destination would you recommend for somebody going over there for the first time? What location, sorry?
Well, you kind of need to see where you want to go or how you're going out of. If you go through Kapili, you could go north or you could go south. It really depends on what, you know, what kind of fish you're looking for. If you go north
Right.
and you get up into the Mohali National Park, that's a really wonderful place to, I mean, the fish there, there's nobody there. No one lives there. Fish are huge. And so that's really a fun place to go. But you go south and you got a different Tropheus at every 10 feet. And the ventralis and the boaops are just knocking your socks off at every site. And so there's really no bad place to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh,
Can you
it just
share with
sounds
us?
like a dream.
Yeah, very much so.
Mhm.
Can you share with us any sort of unforgettable encounter that you've had with cichlids in the wild?
Unbelievable encounters. Well, yeah, I mean, every time I swim, I see something special, really. Whether it's just a new species, or I got to see a behavior, or to see the fish spawning. There's all those possibilities. And so, it's just, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I'm telling you, every time you go in there, you're going to see something cool.
Have you ever seen any invasive species in the lakes?
No, I mean, there could have been, but I probably didn't recognize them or whatever, but
Okay.
not really.
Cool.
Oh no, one thing I have seen, though, that you might find this interesting is, some fish are only found at some sites. And so Tropheus, for an example, you have like a Tropheus red rainbow, which is only found in the south. And all of a sudden you see it in like Mabili Billy, which is more towards the north, because it has escaped from a fish collection tank or tub or bucket or barrel that they keep the fish in. So that's kind of interesting, I mean, at Mabili Billy, especially, because that's a popular place to collect fish. And those guys, if their barrel overturns, usually at night, they take those barrels out and float them in the lake. And if the barrel overturns, all those fish that they collected down in wherever, Casa Kalawi or in Zambia or whatever, those fish are gone. And so you do see that where fish have been displaced. And I don't think they've been purposely let go, but yeah, you see some of that.
Do you think that could cause hybridization?
No, not one fish.
No.
But there's been some interesting things. I'm not exactly sure about the whole story of how it started, but in Zambia, they had, I think, 4 different species of Tropheus. And they had a big bunch of them all on one boat. And I'm not sure what happened. Somebody got mad, or they couldn't, or they thought they had them sold. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but they got dumped in Impalungu, or near Impalungu. And so they have studied this to see what's going to happen, what has happened with these fish. And the first time that they checked on them, they really didn't notice any hybridization. But within 10 years, they did. But that was a lot of fish. It's not just like 1 or 2 that got out of a barrel.
Right.
We've had a couple of people ask about shell dwellers.
Oh.
Can you tell us a little bit about shell dwellers? A bit of an open-ended question, but yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you more, because actually the shell dwellers are found a little deeper than I go, so I don't get to see them.
Oh.
So that's the story there. But basically, you have these little patches of sand, and the shells are on the sand, and little colonies form. And other areas, you have shell beds that are miles long and very deep, like maybe, like 50 feet deep, full of shells. And the fish just live on the perimeter of it. They don't actually go way down deep in there. But it's kind of cool because everybody wants a shell out of Tanganyika. And some of those deep beds, the shells are black. They've been there so long. So it's kind of cool.
Cool. Do you keep shell dwellers yourself?
I have in the past. I don't have any right now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I really like. To me, there's two kinds of shell dwellers. You got the colony type, like Simulus and Multifasciatus.
Mhm.
That's the kind I like, or I can have a group and just watch them grow and spawn and everything. Or you have like the Brevis ocellatus. I want to beat you until you're dead.
Yeah.
I really like to kill you after we spawn. So let's spawn first, then I'll kill you.
Yeah.
So to me, I like the colony because I like a cohesive tank.
Yeah. Fair enough. Makes sense. With around about 100 or so aquariums with your fish house, how does maintenance work for that for you?
Well, we just start on one end and work our way to the other end.
Yeah. So it's all manually done?
All manually done. I mean, we use pumps.
Yeah.
We have a big holding tank, and we use a pump that pumps the water out of the aquarium, and it goes into a holding tub, and then it goes into my chicken yard. And then the incoming has a pump in it, and we just pump it into the tank.
Cool.
Massive water change. I'm a massive water changer. When we change the water, we change like 115%.
So I'm just replying to a comment. Someone just called the Aussies little hate machines, which I think is hilarious.
I've just seen that.
Yeah, that's pretty amusing.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. Aggressive little sods. How long does maintenance take you?
Probably about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, about 3 weeks to get from one side to the other. Because I can only change about 500 gallons at a time because of my dissolved gases.
Yeah.
So my holding tank is 500 gallons. I can cheat a little bit with that. But so when we do a water change, we do about 500 gallons, and then we wait till the next day.
Yeah. So you just sort of schedule. I've done this column or this row, for example. The next, and you just rinse and repeat.
Start on one corner and just go down the aisles until you get to the end, and then you start all over again.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Wow. Not cool, but I understand. Filtration wise, what are you using to filter all those?
Well, I just kind of shook that up a little bit. We've used a blower for years. And I guess it was 2 winters ago now, and we kept losing power. And we have a generator for the blower, but it's in a precarious position, and Gary and I are getting old, and we couldn't get it. We just could not get it all lined up and going, and and so, and then also because we've cut back on our tanks, I said, I want to try the big inline pump, air pumps. So that's what I did. So we've used a blower, and we use sponge filtration. Every tank has, like my 125s, I have double stacks of sponges in those. Plus, Gary makes his own box filter out of a shoe box. So, and all of that was run by the blower. Yeah. And so now we've patched in these air pumps. We had to do 2 to get the volume that we need. Yeah. And it's been great. I really, and my power bill went down. So
that's a bonus.
That is a bonus.
A winner.
Yeah. Can you explain the shoebox box filter a little bit?
Yeah. Those, you just want a plastic box that you can secure the top down on. And then Gary puts you guys know what undergravel filters are?
Yeah.
So use that as kind of a bottom, because you want a little bit of free space on the very bottom of the filter for the water to flow into. And then put some kind of media, sponge media in there, and then throw a bunch of gravel on top of it, put on your lid, and stick an air hose on it.
Wow, nice and simple. And I'm assuming quite cost effective too.
Well, yeah. Since we were already with the sponge filters, I love a sponge filter, but it doesn't pick up the big chunks. And the box filter will do that. So the box filter just it's just another way to use filtration. And I like using 2 different ones, because you got the biological with the sponge, and then you've got your mechanical with the box filter.
Do you have your fish house set out as in from different like different species in different columns or different families or different lakes, or is it just a bit of a mix match all the way through?
My husband, I always crack him up because I tell him we should have the fish in alphabetical order. Okay, and we should start on the east side and do alphabetical order all the way through. Of course, that would only last for a minute because no, there's no organization there at all. It's like the tank is empty. Oh, these fish might look good in that tank. Let's throw them in there and then moving on.
Fair enough. Have you got any tips for anyone who is trying to maintain a large amount of aquariums like that, or would like to expand what they've got on possibly time saving and money saving and that kind of stuff?
Do I know anybody that?
So, do you have any tips? Any tips on how to make that run a bit more smoothly and efficiently?
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you get over 25, 30 tanks, you cannot be using a plug for every tank. I mean, you got a plug for your filter, a plug for your heater, a plug for your light. I mean, give yourself a break. You've got to, unless you're like totally wealthy and it doesn't matter. But even still scares me when you have that much stuff plugged in. It's just, so I always tell Gary, you can have anything you want over at the fish house as long as it doesn't have to be plugged in because we have enough plugged in. Yeah. We're really lucky. We don't have to plug in heaters. We don't, we're mild enough that we don't have to do a heater. We can heat the fish house itself. Yeah. And so we have no heaters in our tanks. That bites us every, 5 or 10 years, but generally we don't have individual heaters. We had all the lights on the ceiling for years and years and years. And lately, because we've got some bigger show tanks and stuff like that, then I've gone to individual lighting on some tanks. But like my 20-gallon tanks and that kind of stuff, it's just the light from the ceiling.
Yeah, I'm guilty of having lots of stuff plugged in, unfortunately. I understand. It's it doesn't take long to run out of bank of plugs in no time. Zen has asked, is there any fishy events you're going to anytime soon or possibly speaking at?
I'm planning to go to the ACA convention in July, for sure. So it was nice to see the person there, KJE Aquatics, that they were promoting the ACA convention. And and then I am going to Africa in October. And this year I'm leaving conings at home. And me and Pam and Caroline and a couple of our other friends, we're going to go to Kapili and just hang out at Kapili. We're not going to do the regiment. You go with conings where, you're roughing it on the lake. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to spend 2 weeks just hanging out in Kapili. Should be a blast.
Cool. And
so
Rochelle is
hanging out. So when you say hanging out, what does that mean? Does that mean just casually diving whenever you feel like it without a schedule?
Yeah, we'll probably have a little schedule, but we're not going to go very far from Kapili. So, Kapili, there's like 7 or 8 islands. There's lots of places to swim there and dive that we can do day trips on, or even like a morning trip or an afternoon trip. Where when you go with conings, you leave the lodge like at 5 o'clock in the morning and you don't come back for 14 days. So that's a little that, and I enjoy that. It's totally fun. It's totally fun for sure. But it's going to be nice this time to just go and stay at the lodge the whole time and explore the Kapilis a little bit more. Maybe go day trip up to Katando or Mtosi to the south, but stick pretty close to Kapili.
Yeah.
Rochelle has asked, is it going to, basically asking if it's going to be live stream the ACA event?
I don't think they've figured out how to do that. There might be some people there that, that have blogs or podcasts or whatever, and they'll be doing something live, but I don't anticipate the ACA doing anything live.
Cool. Back into your fish house, how do you decide what species that you want to keep in there other than I want all of them?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's availability. We don't have we're at the point in our hobby where we really don't need any more fish. And so there's not too many things that I'm lusting after to get. But if they're, we just kind of look at the situation. If somebody wants to bring in something, or we don't get new fish too often, but every now and then we will do a load of fish, and we just move stuff around, make it work.
Yeah. Is there any cichlids that you just refuse to keep for one reason or another?
I've never met a cichlid I didn't like.
Wow. Well, so they're not even Aratus, which everybody seems to have.
Aratus, yeah, no problem.
Wow.
I always think of, yeah. I really love all cichlids.
Yeah, cool. So can you give some advice on keeping them, because they are well known to just want to destroy everything for no reason?
Right. I mean, they're pretty basic, you just need to, figuring out what to keep together is half the battle. And then you just got to have a good maintenance. You need to make sure you keep up on your maintenance, because, and that's with any type of fish keeping, you need to know, I think, you need to know where your fish are from and try to duplicate those parameters in their water. I really do believe that. And a lot of people say, oh, these fish aren't wild, so you don't need to worry about water. They'll be fine. But I really think that if you keep them in the parameters that they come from in the wild, even if they're not wild, you're going to see the full potential of your fish, more so than if you're keeping them at a wrong pH. So pH is key in my mind.
You actually bring up a really good point there, because that happens quite often in the conversation. They're not wild, they've evolved, and blah, 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 blah. And I've always kind of thought, well, you've got these fish that have evolved over however many hundreds of years to these fish that have been tank raised for 15 years. So hundreds of generations to 50 generations, just round numbers, of course. There's no way that evolution has stopped in that short period of time. So I can't see that being logical. If you give them what they want in the water, then you'll get what you want from them
Well, exactly. You're going to have better looking fish. They're going to be more apt to spawn, and you're just going to enjoy them more than if you're not, and I just can't stress the point. If you don't want to play with your water parameters, then you got to work with fish that your water parameters are good for. Yeah. I mean, I love angelfish or ultims. I would die to have those, but I'm kidding myself if I think I could take them to my fish house right now. And, they wouldn't make it for more than a couple of weeks, because my water is liquid concrete. I would have to do an RO, or, and I'm not going to do that. That's too much work.
Yeah, fair enough. Totally makes sense. Zen would like to know, if you wanted to start a neopulcher species tank, what would you suggest plant-wise and other additions would be fairly necessary for them?
Okay, well, it depends on how purist you are, I mean, if you want to set up a tank like the way they are in the wild, you wouldn't have any plants. And you would want to just have a rocky, substrate, and you probably want like 3 or 4 fish, and then you just walk away from it. And once they start breeding, the colony gets bigger and bigger and just fills up your tank. That's really the way to do pulchers or daffodils or helianthus or any of those Burchardi type fish, because they're going to take over the tank if you have a breeding group in the tank. So just give them a breeding group in the beginning and let them do their thing. And those tanks often turn out to be just absolutely fabulous, because you have a full array of ages, coloration, stages, and you get to see some of that behavior that you would probably see in the wild.
That's really cool how they colony exist in that sense. I think that's a really cool trait of that group of fish.
Yeah, and they are quite interactive, and the females have a pecking order. You have your primary female and you have your lesser females, and it's very interesting. You have little workers that take care of the fry, and so it's a fascinating to watch them build a colony. It really is.
Cool. Can you share some of your experiences with breeding cichlids? Is there some that you've struggled with for ages and all of a sudden you've managed to unlock? Or that's the thing about cichlids. Sometimes I think
you know, when you want to breed them really, really bad, you can't. And then when you throw them in the bottom tank and walk away, and 2 weeks later you have fry, you know. So it's a tough one. I just say, you know, again, go back to what they are doing in the wild. The, you know, the closer that you can get to that, then the more successful, you know, then you will be. And so that's how I would do it.
Is there a fish that you've spawned that surprised you on the way that they've spawned to their, I mean, their parental care, the way that they do, or anything like that? You've gone, wow, this is not what I was expecting, or how this sort of come about?
Not really, because you know, I've pretty much know how they're going to spawn before, you know, before I work with them or whatever, and a little bit of research will give you that. Every now and then, you know, in the aquarium, you know, things happen that don't happen in the wild. So, you know, anything could be possible. Where you can see male do parental care, where they don't do parental care in the wild. That's kind of one. Sometimes I think they're altruistic, you know, where they actually feel like they need to interact with other members of the group, or they know something's wrong with the group member or whatever. They just know a little bit more sometimes, especially in these colony keepers. Not so much with you know, substrate spawners where you just have 2 fish involved. It's really the colonies that, I don't know, it seems to offer a lot of variety and fun things to watch.
Yeah, cool. How do you ensure the health and well-being of all your fish on such a large scale?
Well, I just really believe that, you know, I don't change. I just do what works for me, and, you know, it seems to work. We're Gary and neither one of us are very good doctors when it comes to fish. So it's important that we call it preventative maintenance. So we've got to stay on top of the fish tanks, and we got to, you know, we got to pay attention to their water conditions. We've got to make sure everybody's eating, you know, you're providing the right foods, that type of thing. So try to be aware from the get-go. Don't let it bite you in the butt on the backside, because it's too late. And that's very frustrating and very depressing when you lose a whole tank of fish.
Yep, certainly is. Are there any species of fish that you have found particularly challenging to keep?
Well, sometimes, like right now, I've had these red Petrochromis species red. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's a bright red Petrochromis. It's rather small, more like probably like an Amphibium. You know, it gets maybe 10, 12 inches. They're only found in the Mohali National Park, and there's not very many of them, so it's really kind of a rare fish. And it's probably a risk because it has probably been over collected. But man, I've done everything I can do. I've had those fish now for 5 years and I haven't spawned them.
Wow.
So I don't know. And I'm really not you know, this is Gary. Gary is the king of the fish. I'm just along for the ride, and it's very rare that he hasn't spawned them.
Yeah, wow. 5 years is a very long time.
Yeah. And I've started out with like 25 fish, and I think I'm down to about 5. So,
oh, wow.
So I don't think the odds are not there.
No. Where do you see the future of the cichlid hobby going?
Well, it's you know, it's good and it's bad. I mean, there's still a lot of people that are very interested in it, and, you know, they like to do these conventions, and you know, you've made lifelong friends, so you just go to the convention to see your friends again. But compared to when we started, I mean, the hobby has really fallen off, and it's just because, you know, people have water meters over here now, you know, and so, you know, you can't have 100 tanks and afford to pay the water to change your water. I mean, I'm really lucky. I'm on a well, and I don't have a meter on it yet. And hopefully that won't happen unless we sell, and then the next person will have to have the meter. But so there's a lot of that, and it's just expensive, and equipment is more and more expensive. It's really hard for hobbyists to find, find really big tanks. You can't just walk into a store and buy a 240-gallon tank or something like that. So, and where there used to be clubs, in Ohio, which is like the middle of the United States, you could go to a fish club meeting every weekend and probably less than 50 miles away. There are so many fish clubs. And so that has really fallen off too. There's still some really good regional clubs and big clubs and of course the national clubs. But I think the heyday is over. I mean, for example, in the largest convention that I ever went to was probably 1,000 people there. That was like in the early 90s. And now, it depends. The largest just lately, I think there was maybe 600 or 700 in Kentucky 2 years ago. And they combined the cichlids with the live bearers and the killifish. So three. So of course you're going to get more than just the cichlid people. So yeah, it's fallen off. It's expensive. And then often, it's young men that are very into the fish and, they go bananas and then they get married and have kids and the fish have to go away. And then, after the kids are gone, the fish come back. So you just have a big turnover.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. There's a big turnover in fish keeping and it's a very, in and out hobby throughout periods of people's lives. Have you discovered anything new about cichlids that have recently excited you?
Okay, I'm thinking. Not really.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm pretty amazed of all the things that they do. Already I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't. In one sense, they're all kind of pretty similar. The only difference is that one lays their eggs on a rock and the other one holds it in their mouth.
Fair enough. We're beginning to get towards the end of our time together. How can viewers support and learn more about Babes in the Cichlid Hobby?
Well, you can reach out to me on Facebook if you want to send us some money, and we'd be glad to take it. And then our fundraising is really at the ACA convention. So this year we'll be having a silent auction and an oral auction. And so we are asking for donations, any kind of fish equipment that you're not using, fish t-shirts, anything fish related, fish decor, kitchen utensils, towels, anything that's fish related, work out well for the silent auction.
Cool. Okay. So we like to end all of our Phonetics Friday coffee dates with something we call the School of Six, which is 6 very quick fire questions.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. They're not meant to stump you, so hopefully they don't. Doing a coin toss, heads or tails, what's your call?
Oh, heads.
Okay. Paper, scissors, rocks, what's your first call?
Scissors.
Sweet. Are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
Coffee.
Cool. If you could have a meal with anybody from any point in time, alive, dead, make-believe, who would that be?
Ooh. I'd like to go to dinner with Pierre Brochard. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Cool.
I mean, he's like the only guy that's gone around Lake Tanganyika the whole way. There's nobody that's living today that's gone all the way around the lake and explored the fish like he did.
Very cool. Are we alone in the universe?
I don't think so.
Cool. And what is your unicorn fish to either keep, spawn, see in the wild, take photos of? Is there one that just continues to elude you?
Oh, that I don't see.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's a tough one. I mean, there's so many out there. A lot of times what happens is that when I swim at a site and Conings tells me, okay, you're going to see this, this, and this. And so the whole time I'm looking for this, this, and this. And a lot of times I might not see one of them, Or I'll see it swimming away from me and think, oh, there'll be plenty more when I get up to the next point, and they're never there. And I should have chased that one I saw and I didn't.
Cool. So, and where can people find you if they're interested in some of your work or some of the stuff that you've done?
Anybody wants to gab cichlids, just send me a private message on Facebook. That's the best place to catch me.
Let's go. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been fantastic. We don't often get people that come on and talk about cichlids, so it was really interesting, and I found this really fascinating. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back again. I don't feel like we talked about it all. So
cool. I will pencil you in again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in. I've enjoyed it. And thanks to all your little followers over here. Thank you so much for showing up today and listening to me, talk about fish. I love it.
That's what we're all here for. We're here to talk about fish.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, guys.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. It's much appreciated. Have a good one, Sam. Catch you later. Happy fish keeping.